March 31st, 1922. A farmhouse in Bavaria. 6 people inside. A family. By morning, all of them are dead. But here's what haunts investigators to this day. The killer didn't run, didn't flee into the night, didn't disappear. They stayed. For days after the murders, someone lived in that house, fed the animals, ate the family's food, stoked the fires, even baked bread. Neighbors saw smoke rising from the chimney. They thought everything was normal. But inside, 6 bodies lay rotting in the barn and the house, while someone walked through their rooms, slept in their beds, lived their life. The maid had warned them. 6 months before the murders, she quit, terrified. "There are footsteps in the attic," she said. "Someone is up there." Andreas Gruber laughed at her, told her she was hearing things. She wasn't. Someone had been living in their attic, watching them, waiting. And on that March night, they came down. For over a century, investigators have asked the same questions. Who was in that attic? Why did they kill an entire family? And why did they stay? This is the story of Hinterkaifeck, Germany's most disturbing unsolved mystery. A case so bizarre, so full of unanswered questions, that even today we have no answers. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why some mysteries aren't just unsolved. They're unsolvable. Because nothing about this case makes sense, and everything points to something far more sinister than a random murder. Let's begin. Quick pause. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our next mystery. Let's go back to 1922, to a small, isolated farm in Bavaria, to a family that had no idea someone was already inside their home. Picture this: rural Bavaria, 1922, just 4 years after the end of World War I. Germany is broken, struggling, trying to rebuild from the ashes of defeat. About 70 kilometers north of Munich, there's a tiny farming community called Kaifeck. And just outside that community, so far out that it barely counts as part of anything, sits a farm called Hinterkaifeck. Hinter means behind in German, behind Kaifeck, the farm behind nowhere. It's isolated, surrounded by dense forest. The nearest neighbor is half a kilometer away. The nearest town, even farther. In the winter, and March in Bavaria is still very much winter, the farm is almost completely cut off from the world. Snow blankets everything. The roads are barely passable. You could scream and no one would hear you. This is where the Gruber family lived, and this is where they died. Let me introduce you to the people who lived at Hinterkaifeck. Andreas Gruber, 63 years old, the patriarch, a farmer, tough, stoic, the kind of man who didn't complain and didn't ask for help. He'd inherited the farm from his father, and he intended to pass it down to his grandson. He was known in the area as stern, quiet, deeply private. Some said difficult, some said cruel. Cecilia Gruber, 72 years old, Andreas's wife, elderly, frail, but still working the farm alongside her husband. She rarely left the property. Her world was that farm, that house, those rooms. Victoria Gabriel, 35 years old, their daughter, a widow. Her husband, Carl Gabriel, had died in World War I, or so everyone thought. But there were rumors, dark rumors. Some said Carl never died at all. Some said he deserted, and some said he was still out there, watching. Cecilia Gabriel, 7 years old, Victoria's daughter, called Cecilia like her grandmother, but everyone called her Little Casey to avoid confusion. A quiet, shy little girl who went to school in the nearby village. Joseph Gabriel, 2 years old, Victoria's son, a toddler, too young to understand anything about the strangeness happening around him. And finally, Maria Baumgartner, 44 years old, the new maid. She'd only been working at the farm for one day when the murders happened. One single day. She arrived on March 31st. By that evening, she was dead. 6 people, an isolated farm, a killer already inside the house. Now, here's where things get eerie. The strangeness at Hinterkaifeck didn't start the night of the murders. It had been building for months, maybe longer. Let's go back 6 months earlier, September 1921. That's when the previous maid quit, the one I mentioned at the beginning. She told Andreas Gruber she heard footsteps in the attic at night. Footsteps when everyone was supposed to be asleep. Andreas dismissed her, told her she was imagining things. But after she left, he started noticing things too. A few days before the murders, Andreas went out to the barn early in the morning. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, and there, in the snow, were footprints. Footprints leading from the forest to the farm. But here's the thing, there were no footprints leading away. Someone had walked from the woods to the property, and they hadn't left. Andreas followed the footprints. They led to the barn, and then they just stopped, as if the person had vanished into thin air, or hidden. Andreas searched the barn. He found nothing, but he was disturbed. He mentioned it to his neighbor a few days later. Around the same time, Andreas noticed something odd. A newspaper was missing, a Munich newspaper he subscribed to. He was sure it had been delivered, but when he went to read it, it was gone, just vanished. Someone had taken it, but who? His family insisted they hadn't touched it. A set of keys went missing from the house. Keys to the shed, the barn, various locks around the property. Andreas looked everywhere, never found them. Victoria, Andreas's daughter, started hearing the same thing the maid had heard. Footsteps in the attic, at night, slow, deliberate walking, back and forth, she told her father. He went up to check. The attic was full of old furniture, boxes, junk accumulated over decades, plenty of places to hide. Andreas looked around, saw nothing out of place, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there. A few nights before the murders, Andreas found the lock on his tool shed broken, forced open. Nothing was stolen, but someone had been inside. Now, Andreas was a proud man, a stubborn man, but he wasn't stupid. All of these incidents together, they meant something. So a few days before the murders, Andreas did something unusual. He told his neighbor about the strange happenings. He said he was worried. He said he thought someone might be watching the farm. His neighbor suggested he report it to the police, but Andreas refused. He was deeply private, secretive. He didn't trust authorities, didn't want them poking around his property. And so he did nothing, just kept working, kept living, kept ignoring the warning signs, until the night of March 31st, 1922. March 31st, 1922, a Friday evening. The new maid, Maria Baumgartner, had arrived that morning, her first day of work. She'd traveled from a nearby town, probably nervous about starting a new job on an isolated farm. By nightfall, the family was settling in for the evening. This is the last time anyone saw them alive. Here's what we think happened, based on the evidence found later. Around 9 p.m., the family was finishing their evening routine. The children were likely in bed or getting ready for bed. Victoria and Cecilia were probably in the house. Andreas was making his final rounds. At some point, Andreas and Cecilia, the older Cecilia, his wife, went out to the barn, maybe to check on the animals one last time, maybe because they heard something. They walked across the snow-covered ground, opened the barn door, stepped inside, and someone was waiting. The killer struck Andreas first, a blow to the head with a mattock, a heavy farming tool with a flat blade on one side and a pick on the other. It's designed to break through hard soil and roots. Andreas went down, but he didn't die immediately. Then the killer turned to Cecilia. Another blow. She collapsed beside her husband. A few minutes later, Victoria must have wondered where her parents were. Maybe she heard something. Maybe she just had a bad feeling. She walked out to the barn, probably calling for them. She stepped inside, and the killer was still there, waiting. Victoria was struck down just like her parents. One blow, two. She fell near them. Then little Cecilia. The 7-year-old girl, whether she heard her mother scream or was sent to find her, or simply followed out of curiosity, she came to the barn too. Imagine this little girl, 7 years old, walking into that dark barn, seeing her grandparents and mother lying on the ground, blood in the hay. The evidence suggests that Cecilia saw the killer. She must have screamed, tried to run, but the killer caught her. And here's one of the most disturbing details of this entire case. Forensic evidence later showed that little Cecilia survived the initial attack. The first blows didn't kill her. She was found with her hands clutching her own hair, torn out in clumps. She'd lain there in the barn, suffering for hours before she finally died. The killer left her there, alive, in agony. Back in the house, that left 2 people, Joseph, the 2-year-old, and Maria Baumgartner, the maid. The killer returned to the house. Maria, the maid, was probably in her room. She'd only been there a few hours. This was supposed to be her first night of work. She never made it to morning. The killer found her, killed her in her bed. One blow to the head. She probably never even woke up. Then, finally, 2-year-old Joseph, asleep in his bed. The killer murdered him too, a toddler, in his crib. 6 people, all dead. 4 in the barn, 2 in the house. And then the killer stayed. This is what separates Hinterkaifeck from almost every other murder case in history. The killer didn't run, didn't flee into the night, didn't panic and disappear. No, the killer stayed in the house for days. We know this because of what neighbors saw and what investigators found later. Smoke was seen rising from the chimney for days after the murders. The animals were fed and cared for. Neighbors later confirmed the livestock were healthy and well fed. Neighbors saw lights moving inside the house at night. Food was eaten from the family's pantry. Fresh bread was baked in the oven after the murders. The bodies in the barn were covered with hay and old tools, as if someone tried to hide them. Someone was living in that house, walking through the rooms, sitting at the family's table, eating their food, sleeping in their beds, with 6 corpses rotting in the barn and bedroom for days, possibly a week. Think about the level of cold-bloodedness that requires, the sheer psychopathy. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't panic. This was something else entirely. Tuesday, April 4th, 4 days after the murders. Little Cecilia hadn't shown up to school since Friday. At first, the teacher wasn't too concerned. Rural children missed school sometimes. Weather, farm work, illness. But 4 days? That was unusual. The postman had also noticed something odd. Mail was piling up. Deliveries weren't being collected. The farm seemed quiet. Some neighbors had seen smoke from the chimney, so they assumed someone was home. But no one had actually seen any of the Grubers. Finally, some neighbors decided to check on the family. They walked to Hinterkaifeck, knocked on the door. No answer. They pushed the door open. The house was quiet. Too quiet. They found Maria Baumgartner first, in her room, dead, blood everywhere. Then little Josef, in his crib. Panicking, they ran to get help. When police arrived and began searching the property, they made the truly horrifying discovery. In the barn, covered in hay and farming tools, they found the other 4 bodies. Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, and little Cecilia. All had been struck multiple times with a mattock. The weapon was never found. The barn floor was soaked with blood. The hay had been disturbed, as if someone had tried to cover the bodies and clean up. But the most chilling detail? Based on the decomposition and the evidence, investigators realized someone had been living in the house for days while these bodies lay rotting just meters away. The killer had stayed, lived normally, and then, at some point, simply left. Just walked away. The police were baffled. This wasn't a robbery. Nothing of value was stolen. Money was found in the house, untouched. This wasn't a crime of passion, not entirely. Yes, the victims were struck multiple times, suggesting rage. But the calculated way the killer stayed afterward, that was something else. The police brought in over 100 suspects, questioned everyone in the area, pursued countless theories, but they never made an arrest. Let me tell you about the theories, because some of them, they're almost as disturbing as the murders themselves. Remember Victoria's husband, Carl Gabriel? Officially, he died in World War I, missing in action, presumed dead. Victoria was a war widow, but here's the problem. His body was never found, never confirmed. And there were rumors, persistent, dark rumors, that Carl hadn't died at all, that he'd deserted, gone into hiding. Why? Some said he'd been accused of incest. Let me explain the scandal. Andreas Gruber, Victoria's father, and Victoria had an inappropriate relationship. There were whispers in the community that Josef, Victoria's 2-year-old son, wasn't actually the son of Carl Gabriel. People whispered that Andreas was Josef's father, that Andreas had been sexually abusing his own daughter for years. If that's true, and we'll never know for certain, it would explain Carl's alleged desertion. Maybe he found out. Maybe he couldn't stand it. Maybe he ran. But some investigators believed Carl didn't just run. They believed he came back. The theory goes like this. Carl Gabriel survived the war, lived in hiding for years, stewed in rage and shame over what had happened to his wife and family. And then, one night, he returned to Hinterkaifeck for revenge. He hid in the attic, watched the family, waited for the right moment, and then he struck. Evidence for this theory. The killer clearly knew the property layout. The killer was comfortable staying in the house afterward. Carl had motive, revenge. The footprints in the snow could have been Carl arriving. Evidence against Carl Gabriel was never found or identified. No confirmed sighting of him after the war. The sheer brutality, killing children, seems beyond even revenge. If it was revenge, why kill the maid who just arrived? Another popular theory, a drifter, a vagrant, someone passing through the area. Post-WWI Germany was full of displaced people, veterans, homeless, mentally disturbed individuals roaming the countryside. Perhaps someone was looking for shelter, found the farm, hid in the attic or barn. Andreas discovered him, or was about to. So the vagrant panicked and killed the whole family, then stayed because he had nowhere else to go. Evidence for this theory explains the attic sounds, explains why nothing was stolen, not a planned robbery, explains the seemingly random violence, many similar vagrant crimes in that era, evidence against, the calculated nature of covering the bodies, the killer's comfort staying for days. No evidence of forced entry except the earlier toolshed incident. No vagrant ever came forward or was connected to the crime. This is the theory that points to someone local, someone who knew the family, someone with a grudge. Lorenz Schlittenbauer was a neighbor who discovered the bodies with the police. He was also Victoria's former lover. Some even speculated that he might be Josef's father, not Andreas. Lorenz acted strangely during the investigation. He went directly to the bodies before police told him where they were. He showed no emotion when viewing the corpses. He'd been to the farm the day before the bodies were discovered, but claimed everything seemed normal. Some believe Lorenz killed the family out of jealousy, rage, or to cover up the paternity situation. Evidence for this theory: he knew the property intimately. He had potential motive, paternity, jealousy, his strange behavior during discovery. He could have hidden in the barn easily. Evidence against, no physical evidence linking him. He was questioned extensively and released. Motive seems thin for murdering 6 people, including children. Why kill Maria, the new maid? Here's a darker possibility. What if someone inside the family was responsible? What if Victoria, driven mad by years of abuse, trapped on an isolated farm with her abuser, snapped? What if she killed her parents, her children, even herself somehow? Or what if Andreas, controlling, secretive, potentially abusive, killed his own family in a moment of psychotic rage? Evidence for this theory explains the intimate knowledge of the property, explains the lack of forced entry, explains why neighbors saw nothing suspicious beforehand. Evidence against: forensic evidence shows the killer used both hands, unlikely for elderly Andreas. No murder-suicide weapon was found. Victoria's injuries were severe. She couldn't have inflicted them on herself. Doesn't explain who stayed in the house afterward. This is the wildest theory, but it exists. Some believe the murders were ritualistic, occult, the result of some dark ceremony or sacrifice. Bavaria in the 1920s had fringe groups, secret societies, early Nazi occultism beginning to take root. The matic, the positioning of bodies, the strange aftermath. Some claimed these had symbolic meaning. Evidence for this theory: the bizarre nature of the crime, the calculated brutality, the ritual of staying in the house. Evidence against: no actual evidence of occult activity, no symbols or ritual items found. This theory is mostly sensationalism. And then there's the simplest, most chilling explanation. Someone was living in the attic for weeks, maybe months, hiding, watching, waiting. Who? We don't know. A stranger? A runaway? Someone mentally ill? They'd been stealing food. The missing newspaper suggests they were keeping track of the outside world. They'd been living among the family's belongings. Maybe Andreas finally discovered them, confronted them, and the person snapped, killed the whole family to avoid being caught. Evidence for this theory: the maid's testimony about attic footsteps, the missing items, the footprints in the snow leading to the property but not away, the comfort the killer showed staying in the house. Evidence against: no evidence of long-term attic dwelling found. How did they survive undetected so long? Still doesn't explain the calculated brutality. In 1922, forensic science was primitive by today's standards. But investigators did find some things. The matic was never found. The killer took it or hid it so well, it was never recovered. The footprints were photographed in the snow, but they led nowhere. dead end. Autopsies showed multiple blunt force trauma injuries. Little Cecilia's injuries suggested she survived for hours. All deaths occurred on the same night within a short time frame. No signs of struggle inside except Maria's room. Money left untouched. Food partially eaten. Fresh ashes in the fireplace dated to after the murders. Here's something truly macabre. After the autopsies, the victims' skulls were removed and sent to Munich for examination. Some researchers wanted to study them for clairvoyant purposes. Yes, really. This was the 1920s. The skulls were supposedly sent back. But here's the thing. They were never reburied with the bodies. For decades, no one knew where they were. In 1999, 77 years later, the skulls were found in storage at the Munich police headquarters. They've since been buried, finally reunited with the bodies. But for decades, the Gruber family wasn't even allowed to rest in peace. Despite one of the most extensive investigations in German history at that time, no one was ever charged with the Hinterkaifeck murders. Over 100 people were questioned, countless suspects considered. The case files grew massive, but every lead went cold. Every suspect had an alibi, or not quite enough evidence. The case officially went unsolved. After the murders, no one wanted anything to do with Hinterkaifeck. The farm stood abandoned for a year. Then it was torn down, completely demolished. Every building, every structure, the land was sold off. Today, if you visit the site, there's nothing there, just an empty field. A small memorial stone marks the approximate location. But locals still say the area feels wrong, heavy, cursed. No one has ever built on that land again. So why, after more than 100 years, is this still unsolved? A few reasons. The era. 1922 forensics were primitive. No DNA testing. No advanced crime scene analysis. Evidence that would solve the case today simply couldn't be collected or preserved then. The isolation. The farm's remoteness meant no witnesses. No one saw anything. No one heard anything. The killer's intelligence. Whoever did this was careful. They took the weapon. They left no clear evidence. They disappeared without a trace. The secrets. The Gruber family was deeply private, possibly hiding dark secrets, the alleged incest. This meant investigators couldn't fully understand the family dynamics or potential motives, the chaos. Post-WWI Germany was in turmoil. Record keeping was poor. People moved around constantly. It was easy to disappear. The case has been reopened multiple times. In the 1930s, in the 1950s, in the 1980s, most recently in 2007. Each time, investigators used the newest technology available. Each time, they came up empty. In 2007, students from the Furstenfeldbruck Police Academy conducted a cold case review using modern forensic psychology and criminal profiling. Their conclusion? The most likely suspect was someone who knew the family, someone local, possibly Lorenz Schlittenbauer, the neighbor. But even they admitted, without physical evidence, we'll never know for certain. You know what's truly haunting about Hinterkaifeck? It's not just that 6 people were murdered. It's not even that the killer was never caught. It's the attic. It's knowing that someone was living above that family's heads for weeks, watching them, listening to their conversations, their arguments, their routines. It's the footprints in the snow that led to the farm, but never away. It's little Cecilia, 7 years old, lying in that barn for hours, suffering, while the killer moved freely above her. It's the calm, calculated way the killer fed the animals, baked bread, lived in the house as if nothing had happened. It's the complete absence of panic, the complete absence of humanity. That's what makes this case so disturbing. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't even really about murder. This was about control, about power, about someone who saw a family and decided, coldly, calculatedly, to erase them, and then to inhabit their space, to take over their life, to pretend for just a few days that the farm was theirs. So what does Hinterkaifeck teach us? That some mysteries will never be solved, that some questions will never have answers, that evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides, in attics, in shadows, in plain sight. That the scariest stories aren't the ones where the monster appears. They're the ones where the monster is already in your house. Andreas Gruber knew something was wrong. He saw the footprints, he heard the sounds, he felt the wrongness. But he did nothing. Pride, stubbornness, privacy, whatever his reasons, he ignored the warnings. And it cost him everything. There's one last thing I want you to consider. What if the killer is still out there? Not literally, they'd be over 120 years old by now. But metaphorically, what if someone alive today knows what happened? What if the killer told someone before they died? A child, a spouse, a confession in old age? What if the truth is sitting in an old diary somewhere? A letter? A deathbed confession that was never reported? The answer to Hinterkaifeck might still exist, somewhere, waiting to be found. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe the only people who ever knew the truth are buried in a cemetery in Bavaria, their skulls finally reunited with their bones after decades of separation. Maybe the secret died with them. And maybe that's the real horror of Hinterkaifeck. Not just that 6 people were murdered, but that we'll never know why. We'll never know who. We'll never know what drove someone to such calculated brutality. The farm is gone. The family is gone. The killer is gone. All that remains is the story, the mystery, the question that will never be answered. And on quiet nights, when you're alone in your house and you hear something in the attic, footsteps maybe, slow and deliberate, remember Hinterkaifeck. Remember that sometimes the footprints lead to your door, but they never lead away. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of the most disturbing unsolved cases in history. Not because of what we know, but because of what we'll never know. 6 people, 1 farm, 1 killer, and over a century of silence. If you found this story as haunting as I did, let me know in the comments. What's your theory? Who do you think committed these murders? And more importantly, could something like this happen today? Thank you for watching, where history's darkest mysteries come to light. Remember, the past isn't always dead. Sometimes it's just hiding in the attic, waiting.